Hello, this is Jessica Pettit, and who do I have the pleasure of interviewing today?
I'm Brad Fortier, anthropologist, educator, entertainer, and author, as well as a DE&I consultant.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for showing up
Yay.
on a Zoom interview. I don't know that you arrive. I hope you found parking. Um, how we like to start is two big picture questions that are still rolling around in my head. There are no wrong answers. So I'm going to ask you one of them at a time, and I just want your opinion of how they land on you.
Okay.
First one is this concept of diversity dividend, like ROI capitalism, maybe something else. I don't know. Diversity dividend. How does that land on you, Brad?
Well, I mean, the way I think about diversity is honestly, I feel like it's an outcome of doing other things. So, if my understanding of dividend is correct, which is like an a benefit of investment, a payback of investment.
Return on investment.
Yeah, ROI. Then I think diversity in your workforce is more so, especially if you're seeing it, an uptick in it, because you're doing other things properly. You know, that you have an inclusive environment, that people feel like they belong, and that your hiring processes have kind of been managed well enough to kind of clear bias that's impacting kind of your incoming stream of applicants. So when I hear that word, those are all the things that come to mind for me, is that people have been doing their homework and have been changing policy and have been training staff on how to do things in a way that don't alienate people and make people feel like, oh, these folks know how to value me. And so I'm going to come in.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. So here, that kind of segues to number two is once they're in, asterisks other duties assigned. What does that mean for you and you personally throughout your own kind of work life and work history? How has asterisks other duties assigned shown up for you?
I mean, and that's fraught, simply because I think some of the impacts of it have to do with context. So, first of all, like, what is my identity? Like, the person who's getting the asterisk, duties as assigned. Secondly, what are the duties as assigned that are rolling it onto my plate? And thirdly, I'm sorry. Thirdly, the Oompa Loompas are here.
Can we just interrupt for a second and give you some serious unicorn points for best ringtone ever? That was amazing. That was amazing. I might have to call you just so that that's part of the video. Okay.
So where were we? Oh, we were talking about duties.
Other duties assigned.
Yeah. I mean, some of it for me too, like, has to do with like how organized is that workplace, you know? Because if you show up and your other duties as assigned outnumber the things described in the job description and whatever promotion you responded to, then that's that's a danger sign, organizationally, of like, I've just stepped into a place that really doesn't understand work structure or management structure, and how to communicate that well and stick to it. Um, and I think that's also, speaking of diversity and other things in the process for hiring, it also might speak to larger patterns of we can't retain people, which is a culture thing then, at least in my mind.
It's really interesting to me, I think, because a lot of the answers that have come from both of the questions, but that one specifically is about scope creep, right? And that this is a really good thing to kind of pay attention to. But it is also interesting is that that is also because of workplace culture, it is a tool you could use to actually find your community because you are going to position yourself in this way. So it's another example of like the same thing can be a red flag and can also be a survival mechanism. And sometimes, spoiler alert, survival mechanisms become red flags, right? Like it's just something to pay attention to. Speaking of paying attention, when you filled out your survey to do this, hi, theater background, improv background, and DEI consultant and facilitator. Hi, it's nice to meet you. Right. I was very excited to read that. And I'm curious to from a theater production place, from a improv participant, educator place, now doing DEI work. Here is the question I want to ask you about that. What is the question that you wish people asked about those three things coming together that people never do? And what is the answer?
I think the thing that I wish people asked would be like just straight up, how do those relate? Because that would give me the opportunity to like help them through the math of it. Because I mean, as an anthropologist, I study improvised theater and how it affects people, and it as a system, I think is really wonderful for relationship building. And so I see it as another tool in the toolkit for connecting people across difference. I don't want to say it's a cure-all because nothing is. And at the same time, I use aspects of it, especially the aspects that focus on power and how behavior can communicate power, that I think have blown people out of the water sometimes in terms of creating a space more conversation on identity. I froze for a second, so I'm just holding.
Yep. Totally good. You're talking about how you use aspects of power. That's where it cut out.
Yeah, aspects are communicated through behavior, you know. I mean, a simple thing that I do is I split a group in two, and I give group a specific directive for how they should make eye contact, and group B a different directive for how they make eye contact. And then I just have them walk around the room silently, following those eye contact instructions. And then we debrief that, and people, like 99% of the time, people come out of it like with feelings and narratives in their heads just as a result of how they followed two different sets of rules for eye contact, and that elicited an emotional response and a narrative response in their mind of why that was or what it meant. And from there, I'm like, if we get this much just from eye contact, what does it mean when we put the rest of the body and our words in there? In which case, we have a huge amount of things to observe and pay attention to in terms of the power environment, and how we may not, you know, depending on what our identities are, we may not even be allowed access to certain elements of that behavioral set of power communication because it leads to danger for ourselves or for someone else. So once we kind of put that in the air, it allows people to kind of come from their own perspectives and experience from a behavioral lens. And in ways, it can make the conversation a bit more neutral and less fraught. Um, there's no way you can completely get it to be not fraught because we live in the world we live in. Systems of oppression are embedded in everything. So, but just being able to like let people inhabit that space and share their experiences around power and their access to it, and the things that they have to do to manage the power that they're encountering is huge in terms of like people who have it suddenly being able to like notice it and
Mhm.
people who don't being able to communicate like, this is why, you know, I have to do X, Y, and Z, you know?
Yeah,
And
I think I often use, because I like Chuck Palahniuk, the Fight Club metaphor is that the first rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club, but the second rule is to be involved in Fight Club long enough that you forgot about rule number one. You just don't talk about it. It doesn't have to become a rule anymore. So by using power, like I use humor, right? So by finding those moments where you are reminded that you were told to forget this thing. Oh, I'm following directions. Oh, who wrote those directions? I forgot I was following the directions. Now I can see who doesn't have access to those directions. Yeah, that's super smart. Super smart.
bingo.
Okay.
So, as an anthropologist, I study improvised theater and how it affects people and how they use it and how people consume it. And that through that, there's an element of it that deals with how behavior communicates power. And so I use those tools to kind of break open this conversation about power, moment to moment power that's established through our behavior and communication.
That's awesome. Okay, now, are we ready for my two favorite questions?
Yes.
Question numero uno, my favorite one. That's not true because number two is also my favorite one. One of my favorite ones is what is something you have changed your mind about lately?
Mm.
It can be anything. It doesn't have to be Serios. No.
Sure. Something I've changed my mind about lately is, um, and I think this is a self-care thing, because I've come from this, kind of frantic space of white maleness and having to kind of like trip over myself to like um do the work I need to do, not only in myself to dismantle, but in the world. But at the same time, what that's led to is always onness and not giving myself space to rest
Mm.
and be disconnected for a little bit so that I can recharge. So that's the thing that I've changed my mind about. Actually, like COVID kind of just encouraged it of like, um, now that I'm working from home, it's very easy for me to just be engaged from the time I wake up till the time I go to bed. And whether that's, in my profession or like serving on a board or even just having friends contact me with questions. Um, I think that's the thing. It's almost like owning a truck or being a lawyer or a doctor. Like once people figure out you're D and I person, suddenly it's like, oh, can I borrow you for this question?
Wait, you've got two ladders? I know a guy. Right, exactly. Okay. Speaking of knowing, favorite question number two, what do you absolutely know?
What do I absolutely know?
Hmm?
I absolutely know that improvised theater is an effective tool for creating community and connecting people across not only cultural difference, but linguistic difference. So,
Excellent.
yeah.
Excellent. Are you ready for the lightning round?
Yes.
All right, so I have these icebreaker cards. And in the icebreaker cards, there are easy, intermediate, and deep questions. So you randomly gave me three numbers, which I'm also excited about because they're not even in chronological order, just three random numbers. Yeehaw. Okay, so number one is number 14, which is an easy question. So without thinking about it too hard, you have to spit out your answer. And that is number 14, easy. What was your first pet or first pet you knew? Name, type, breed, personality, traits, etc.
First pet was named Mitzi, was a little dog. I don't know. I think it was inbred, because my parents ended up having to put it down because it was so hyperactive. It was nipping at us.
Hmm.
It was a sad lesson as a young child, but that was That was the first pet, little Mitzi.
Rest in peace, Mitzi.
Sorry, Mitzi.
Number 32, deep. If someone asked you how you've made a difference in the world, what would you say?
I would say I educated thousands of people on improvisation and how it can be transformative and why. And that feels good. So it's like I've infected the world with that meme or whatever.
That's amazing. It's lifted the world. That's great.
Yeah.
All right, last one, number 27, intermediate. Share a life goal that you've set for yourself.
Life goal for myself is not only educate, but also produce art. So I have been able to write 2 solo shows. I've
Wow,
been able to paint and draw, and I also have made music. So,
that's cool. What instruments?
oh, just keyboards, electronic stuff.
That's music. What about the painting or the art you said?
Oh yeah, painting, like a little bit of oil, more kind of like charcoal pencil, and I'm just getting into colored pencils now too.
Um, I tried very hard to be a successful art major, and oil allowed me too much time to change my mind. Charcoal triggered everything that is OCD about me. That's not good. I'm sure my therapist now would be like, what a great idea. Get messy. Woo. Um, but I discovered at some point in time, I think I might have been like 14 or 15, but I saved up my allowance. Was not a good babysitter. I mowed lawns. But I saved up my allowance and my lawn mowing money, and I bought the like 100-pack Prismacolor pencils. And I want you to know, I am almost 50 years old, and I had that until maybe a year ago, and I gave
Mm,
it to a kid. Um, but the array of all of them, and they're all sharpened at the same time, and I could change the order to make the color palette. That was therapy. That was therapy before I had a therapist. Prismacolors.
that must have,
Excellent. Okay.
yeah.
Thank you for the completely random little share, but I
Oh,
appreciate it. Brad, if people wanted to get in touch with you instead of listen to my weird therapy stories, how would they go about listening or reaching out to you, listening to you, seeing you in action?
They can visit my website, www.bradfortier.com. They can respond to using my email. Gmail's the best way to do it. What can I say? I'm low tech. I don't have like a Brad at bradfortier.com address, really. But yeah, that would be the way to do it. And
Great.
thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for a great talk. And thank you for connecting actual reasons why humor, improv, anthropology, theater, and doing DEI work matters. And the through line is all power. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you.